Welcome to Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness. I'm your host, Christine Madera. For me, and possibly for you, the inner world of consciousness has always been much more real and way more fun than the so-called real material world. Growing up, I thought I was alone in this, but I'm not. There are a lot of us, and far too many have no one to talk to who shares this experience. I've been lucky to cultivate a community of friends who love to talk about the energies, ideas, and vibrations that are pushing the edges of our own consciousness, as well as our collective consciousness. In Conversations from the Edge, we share our conversations with you. Welcome to Conversations from the Edge. This is your host, Christine Madera, and we are back today with Miché Meizner. And welcome, Miché. It's so nice to have you back.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
And so why don't you do just a little intro of whatever feels relevant today, and then you had a great topic that we were going to jump right into.
So you're introducing, I'm introducing.
You're introducing.
Okay. Sorry.
What do you want to say
right.
that's relevant about you today?
Got it. Yeah. And that does change all the time. So I am Miché Meizner, host of the Spoonbenders Cafe. I'm a coach and energy worker and a mentor, helping people have higher, more awakened consciousness and love themselves. And that's what I figure my job in the world is, to help people love and accept themselves and to be the gift that they came here to be.
All right, that's fabulous. We need a lot of that in the world, especially right this moment. So you had come with a really interesting topic to talk about today. So I'm just going to ask you to explain a little bit about this, and then let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's something that I have noticed at various times around memories. And I wound up having a conversation with my partner earlier where she was sharing some very vivid memory, not even a specific memory, but a memory of a time of her life. And I asked her, could she feel a certain energy around her as she was talking about it? And as she thought about it, she realized that she said she felt sort of enveloped in this energy. And we talked a little bit and got to the understanding that the energy that you would feel enveloped in would change depending on the memory. It's not like just a happy energy or a sad energy or whatever, but that it's almost like the energy. So the energy that I feel sometimes when I'm thinking about a certain memory, a certain time in my life, it's like a hologram. It's as if the energy that I feel viscerally around me contains all the information, all the memories, all the scents and the tastes and the images of that time, sort of encoded in this energetic is what is coming to me in the moment about it. And very distinct, each different memory that comes with this, the feeling of that, the sense of that energy is very distinct and separate from the others, which I guess is why I feel like it holds the whole of that moment in it. And I have never really talked with other people about it. And I'm really curious and interested to talk with you about it and see what that brings up for you, what you bring to it. And then hopefully other people will be chiming in the conversation, and sharing their experiences with us later.
Okay. So, when you were talking about that, it kind of brought to mind a previous conversation that we had about dimensional shifting, because it was a similar quality when I was playing with that when I was in the different dimensions, the whole energetic of that dimension was complete. And it wasn't like I was in one place thinking about this other place that I would like to be, like this other reality I would like to be in. It was like stepping completely into this fully envelops reality. And so I had that thought with it. And also, they're finding are more and more going into the idea that memory is not contained in the brain. Memory is contained in the field. And the field is
Yes.
an energy or is energetic. And so if your memory is in the field and you're accessing the fullness of that memory, like not just the emotional qualities that resonate in your body, but you actually are able to have the clarity of moving directly into the entire energetics of the memory, it would be its own complete holographic experience. But I find it fascinating actually, because as you were talking about it, I'm like, oh wow, I've had that experience too, but I never would have phrased it that way or really even looked at it that way. So what a fun thing.
Yes, and that's what I love about conversations like these, and specifically with you, is that, as we start sharing and delving into it a little bit, it does expand the idea or the experience for each of us, or it'd be like, oh yeah, I never thought about it, or I didn't even notice that I was feeling that. My partner now
Mm-hmm.
has this new almost sensory apparatus that she can connect to and dip into, that she didn't before, even though she was having those sensory experiences but not noticing it. And I think that's one of the things that we do in these conversations, is just sort of throw out these little breadcrumbs even for people
Mm-hmm.
to pick up and look at and spark something in themselves. And the more we do that together with each other, it expands all of us.
Well, and I've noticed something in the last, it's hard to say how long it's been, but in the last month to month and a half, but really in the last like 2 to 3 weeks, that there's been an enormous shift in people just like letting go of one paradigm and opening up to new possibilities, and people that aren't necessarily in the spiritual community or looking at things from a spiritual perspective, or even looking for these kinds of experiences. It's like they wake up one day and they're like, you know what, I realized I was done with all the other stuff that I had been doing, and I'm open to what's coming in. And I don't know what it is, but it's really kind of interesting, and it's kind of exciting, and it's a little scary. And now we're in the midst of all of like this global kind of idea of we don't know what's next. And so it seems like we're being blessed with these new awarenesses when we're willing to be open to them. And so, with your partner being able to access these new perspectives and abilities, I think is part of this process of, sometimes it's called waking up, or a great awakening, or the shift from Homo sapien to Homo spiritus, whatever you want to call it. There are things that are rising within us and allowing us to experience life differently. And now life is participating in the process for all of us as well. So, I mean, I find it to be a really exciting time. And as you're talking about this, I was realizing too that there are times in my life that I've had significant experiences with ways of being in the present moment. And that when I think back to that time, a lot of it is really to access that energy and bring that energy and gather that energy in the present. And so it is kind of using that hologram method, not to think of what was happening, but to think of, for me, or to re-experience the energetics of that, so that I can bring them into my life right now. Because sometimes, I mean, right now, everything feels a little bit in flux, and I'm mostly able to kind of surf with it. But there are times, or if I'm talking to somebody who's really deep in emotion, like that, I pick that up and I need to kind of come back into that present moment. And so I've had a little bit of those experiences as well. Is that how you kind of experience these things? Or for you, what happens when you're in this hologram? What does it do for you in that moment? Or how do you bring that into your present moment? Or well, you know what I'm asking. What is that like for you?
Yeah, right. Well, I think that I haven't done much with it. It's something that I have noticed. It was like sort of a moment in passing, and then it would go, or I would just let it go. And having this conversation with you, and having talked with Lynn this morning, and just now, listening to your words and about the idea of not sort of accessing a memory of that with that, but being in the present moment. And, what's going through my mind and my experiences, okay, how often am I really in the moment, or rather going through the moment, right? Like always, like, yes, okay, I'm here with you, but we're moving on to the next, to the next, to the next.
Right.
And as you were talking, I was listening and just being. And I felt, and I think we talked about this in another one too, about again, with the dimensions and the layers and time and whatever, but this sense of being an expansion of my being. And it's actually something that Elohim talks about, and perhaps, by the time you're listening or you're airing this, your discussions with Elohim will have come out. So it may not be so out of the blue, but the idea of it's all me. And so not like, okay, we're all energy, and so I'm energy, and the walls in my room are energy, but that somehow it is all a part of me. It's all me experiencing me, the energy of me presenting itself for my awareness. And so as you were talking about having that holographic sort of sense in the moment, in the present time, it was almost like I kind of became the room that I'm in, and the whole room is sort of having this conversation with you now and listening to you and talking. That just sounds like, I don't know, some, acid trip or something. Although I've never had one, but just.
Well, it doesn't sound like an acid trip. Well, I won't go into that, but one of the energies I think that's really up, and this happens anytime there's a big tragedy, right? Whether it's a hurricane or a tsunami, or, where something happens somewhere in the world, people feel the connection. Our layers of difference are dropped, and we connect with people on a heart level that they are me. And we might not phrase it that way, but we feel connected in that way. So we reach out with money, we send blankets, all this kind of stuff. And it's interesting that it's often in times of crisis that when there's nothing else that we can really do, when all of our normal stories are on hold, and the world's not working in the way that we have come to expect it, or the stories we tell about it, that we're able to be in a particular kind of present moment where we're able to access that connection and that presence and that experience that, I am one with these people who are suffering. And the gift right now of this entire process as this little tiny virus, as Elohim talked about it, with this little vector going one person to the next, to the next, to the next, is completely reorganizing everything and everyone all at the same time. So we're having an individual experience of our whole experience. And we're able to really see on so many levels that we are one. We are all in this together. And we're not just in this together on a health level, but we're in this together on an economic level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, on every level, because everything is so interconnected, and it's hard not to be in that. And so for me, one of the great experiences of this, or the great gifts of this, is the opportunity to really, all of our stories are suspended. Nothing is functioning as we are expecting it to function. And that can actually be a really good thing, because it helps to drop us in the present moment and helps us to tap back into, if it's not a back into this place of, of uncertainty, which is that place where we tend to either go into fear, or ideally, like in these moments in the past, when we're in this place of crisis, our uncertainty almost, well, I won't say universally, but often results in this heart connection with people, that all of the stories around why we're separate drop away, and we are able to be in this connected space. And I'm fascinated to see how this is unfolding, as much as it's really stressful for lots of people. And of course we can all respond in stress, or we can, come back into the present moment and connect and feel connected and feel supported in that connection and step forward from there. And I think the more that we can do that, the more we're going to be able to create something new on the other side of this, as an entire world community that is something that's much more supportive of one another and much more functional when it comes to like global systems.
Yeah, I agree.
That
How
was a
can
little
we lift each
segue.
other up? And yeah, that's a great segue.
Sorry.
Right. And no, that's great. And that, how do we maintain ourselves during uncertainty? And of course, this is hitting some folks harder than others. I
Yes.
recognize that. I mean, all the way to, the people who are dying.
Mm-hmm.
And, then all the way sort of traveling out to on a more impersonal, not individual level, right? That our institutions and our paradigms and our ideas of how things work or what is possible or not possible is being changed, because the change is forced. I mean, we have to
Mm-hmm.
do something. And so, yes, these like the rules are being dropped. And
Mm-hmm.
in that, we can start to see that, what else have we been assuming are immutable rules that really aren't, that like anything can change, and not just in a bad, scary way, but,
Mm-hmm.
we can change, we can shift the reality that we're living by actually deciding differently, assuming differently. And people are having to do that now. And if we can carry that off with a sense of love and compassion for ourselves and for others, and for, looking for something higher and better, there's a lot of opportunity in here,
Well, and that
along
kind
with,
of,
mm, well, just along with the pain, and the loss that is also going on
mm-hmm.
for people.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of comes back to your hologram idea, that whether you create that hologram in the moment by coming into the present, by finding ways to be thankful, by bringing your energy fully into the now, and knowing that right now in this moment you feel safe and you feel okay and you feel supported, and creating, like, letting that be a hologram for everything, which is not only service to yourself but to the world. Or if there are times in your life, like memories that you can call on, that are their own energetic hologram of that particular kind of energy or experience. And then you also have, with something like that, the hindsight of being able to say, it really did turn out okay. I felt that way in the
Right.
moment. I had no idea what was going to happen, and it worked out okay. And here I am. And I can share a story about that.
Please do.
Okay, so, and this is one I've gone back to a lot, because it was a time that I was in Russia. I was about 23, 24 years old. This was the collapse of the Soviet Union. I'm traveling by myself. I'm not there with tourists. I'm there, by me, myself, and stuff. And I was kind of putting together places to stay. Like, I didn't have hotels to stay in because you had to be there through Interest, and I'd come in through China, and it was great. I was having a good time. But I found I was in St. Petersburg, which had recently changed over like 2 weeks earlier from Leningrad to St. Petersburg, and all of my places to stay fell through. And I couldn't go to the hotel system because I would be under like the Interest thumb, and they'd be wondering why I wasn't there through Interest. And I didn't have the money to travel with Interest because it was like $300 a night. And so I was sitting there going, okay, I could panic and I can freak out, but that's really not going to help me. So I sat down and I said, all right, I'm just gonna, what's real right now, what's happening, what's going on. Okay, so what's happening right now is I don't have a place to stay. I'm not sure. I don't speak the language. I don't, I'm not sure what to do because I don't know how the systems work here. I don't know where might be a safe place to, like, just go spend the night, like in a bus station or something like that. I didn't know any of those things. So I'm like, okay, so what I really need here is, some kind of movement forward. So I sort of sat there for a little while, and I came into the truth of what was, which was that I had all these unknowns and I needed somewhere to stay and I didn't want to be in a panic about it. So I kind of sat for a moment and leaned into it. And I said, all right, God, divine, whatever, this is my plan. And I kind of had the sense of what the plan was. It was almost a two-way street. It wasn't like I was dictating the plan. It was like I was hearing the plan and I was voicing the plan. And I was like, okay, my plan is that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch everybody getting off the train. So I was at the train station and that was my plan. I'm going to go to the train station. I'm going to watch everybody get off the train. I'm going to recognize somebody who speaks English and I'm going to talk to them, tell them my situation. And I am going to, and they are going to have the next step for me, whatever that is. So I thought, that's my plan. If there's another plan I need, let me know. So I sat there for like 2.5 hours and I was watching people come off train after train after train. I saw these two guys get off and I'm like, oh, they speak English. So I walked up to them and I explained my situation. And I had 3 nights that I didn't have a place to stay. And so one of my contacts said, after 3 nights, I've got space for you, but I don't right now. And so I explained the situation and they said, well, they were 2 Polish guys and they had been traveling with an American Aikido demonstration group. And they said, it's interesting that one of the women had to cancel out at the last time. So there's a bed that's available with the women for 3 nights, the 3 nights that were in St. Petersburg.
Whoa.
I'm sure they'll let you have that bed. And so part of me was like, oh yeah, this is what's supposed to happen. And part of me was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So, that they were coming on the next train and then they explained it. It was no problem. I got to stay with them. I got to do things that I never would have done. I got to eat because there was a famine. So the only thing I had been able to eat was train station food and vanilla ice cream. And it was like 20 degrees. So ice cream was not the thing, but it was something I could buy on the street. So I got to eat. I had a warm place to stay. It was for 3 nights. And then I got into my next spot. So, but it was a time where I just dropped into, all right, there's nothing I can do moving. I have no ideas moving forward, like nothing, I got nothing. And being totally open to what was possible and being in that place of magic. And so oftentimes when I get to places where it feels impossible and I don't know where to go, I go back to that feeling and back to that space and back to that hologram, where I can then trust that unfolding because I've done it before.
Wow. What an awesome story and experience. Yeah. And it, makes me think of just the idea, the teaching, of surrendering, and that it's not about defeat, and it's like being just being present, surrendering the attempt to, fight against something or for something. Like your only option at that moment. Well, I mean, you could have done different things, but what you chose was to simply be and be present and open and aware. And then watch things unfold. And I think the more we do that, just in even everyday existence, when I'm in that sort of presence and not, sort of following inspiration, not trying to force things, not trying to keep to like a specific schedule or shoulds or shouldn'ts, just being is when the most magical things come, or when the things that come seem magical. I don't know that it's so much magic, but it's like, right, when you're not, it's when it's clear that you're not doing a certain thing to get a certain response. You are being, and life happens with you through you.
And you're open to the serendipity of what would be, because those guys would have gotten off the train and that group was still in town, even if I would not have been focused on or open to the idea of meeting them, even if I'd been freaking out and trying to find some homeless place to stay overnight, or, hanging out with the gypsies, because there was I guess you could call them gypsies, the Roma community. There was a Roma community there too. And I thought, well, I don't know how safe that is, but, I was kind of eyeing them to see, well, maybe that's something that I could do. That would be an interesting experience. Wasn't really the experience I wanted. But yes, being in that place of being open to what is possible so that you can actually get the hints and the hits about, who to talk to and where to go and what to do and be open to things as they unfold. It's very different than when you're trying to plan and plot and you're operating from stress. And if I'd have been running around saying, oh my gosh, I have no place to stay, what am I going to do? And I would have been in a completely different space. I never would have been in a place to be able to meet and connect with this group of people. So absolutely true.
Yeah.
So I would invite
Right.
people then that, especially right now, because right now is a time of huge uncertainty. So is there a kind of hologram memory that people have about when they were able to be really deeply present? And sometimes it happens like at the birth of a child, or it happens under deep stress. It can happen when somebody dies. It can happen in a calamity. It can happen in a magical moment. It can happen on vacation. It can happen seeing, like, it happened to me when I saw a whale breach for the first time in Hawaii, and I was like swept up. But any of those times that you can tap into, not just as a memory, but as like coming into the resonance of it as a way of being, and remembering that in your body, like, reconnecting and bringing that into your body as a way to begin to operate from that right now.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think of, I've done a little bit of studying of access consciousness, which is a lot about just asking questions.
Yes.
And it's something that I, teach in my coaching of one of the main questions is just what else is possible? And the idea is to ask the question, but to not answer the question. Because if you answer it yourself, you can only answer it from your limited repertoire of what you think is possible or likely or could happen. And, like in this example that you had, how many thousands of likely scenarios or unlikely scenarios might you have written down in a list and never come up with that? That the universe and the many moving parts and moving people is way beyond our comprehension. And so to like ask what else is possible, I feel like I'm just putting it out into the universe. It's also like, show me what else is possible that is beyond my conception, and then be open to notice, what comes forward.
Yeah, I love access consciousness for that. And questions are a really great way to begin to come into new states of all kinds of awareness and possibilities. So they're fun for that. And they always ask like kind of some crazy questions. But that one is really good, that what else is possible? And the sitting in the energy of possibility versus sitting in the energy of conclusion. That I found is a big something to watch, because we always want to be, as in personality, we want to be in conclusion because we want the certainty of knowing what's next, Whereas possibility, what else is possible? Possibility is that place of expansion, of consciousness, of really trusting yourself and life and the universe, or whatever you want to call it. But I guess it comes down to trusting yourself on that really deep level, not your mind, not your thought process, not your conditioning, not your intelligence or ingenuity, but trusting that you are tapped into something that is much larger than you, and trusting that unknown to show up for you as you need it.
Yes. Right.
Wow.
And it takes, some courage and willingness to stand in that kind of uncertainty. I'm thinking, even if you're praying for something, usually it is, you're praying for something. You're not praying for like, what else is possible, right?
Yeah.
Praying that this and this and this happen. And, what if something else, more interesting, more expanding, more supportive is available? And, because of our conditioning and our fears and our rules and whatever, we just can't even see it. And so we keep recreating, almost, I feel like there's a tendency, like I would almost rather know that if this doesn't work out, then it means, I'm going to lose my job, and then I'll lose my house, and then I'll, it's like the litany of what is going to go wrong on some level is safer to have as an understanding than to sit in uncertainty and to just say, I have no idea. I have no idea what is going to happen next, or how I'm going to get through this, or what it's going to look like, in a week or a month.
Well, and the skill set right now And this is so apparent to me anyway, that the skill set for navigating where we are right now, and really for navigating all of life, but right now we don't have any other option except to navigate this particularly, is to be
Mm-hmm.
able to become comfortable in uncertainty and the unknown and begin to master operating from uncertainty and creating from uncertainty and becoming comfortable with the discomfort of uncertainty, because that is also the excitement of possibility. And in the body, fear and excitement run much of the same circuitry. It's the context that we give them that make us feel afraid or help us to feel excited. And so to begin that inner shift from feeling afraid of the uncertainty, and even using the vocabulary, like what else is possible, and inviting yourself to come into the excitement of what is possible, can begin to shift how you experience that energy, that fear around the uncertainty of what's happening day to day and moment to moment. So to me, and I've been talking about this for years, but nobody's paid really much attention to me, but it is, and I've been working on it for myself and with my clients and things, about the importance of being comfortable with discomfort. And this is why, like, I didn't know that this was coming, but it really did seem that we were moving into this era where we were going to need to be able to create something that we didn't even know was coming in, and being able to sit with uncertainty and begin to pattern it as something that is exciting versus fearful, is kind of the way that we navigate this as individually and as a global community.
I'm having this experience of how our DNA, like in a petri dish, reacts to its environment, its emotional environment. And one of the things that happens when you're in a fear mode and survival mode is your DNA, the twists of it actually tighten up, and fewer chromosomes are like available to interact. And as you relax and feel at peace and open, your DNA unwinds. And again, bringing more, like we have so many more genes and chromosomes than they talk about, than we know, and that we don't even know what they do. But it's like, well, what if some of those chromosomes are exactly the chromosomes that we need to get through and grow through and expand through the circumstances that we're in right now? And if we go into fear and our DNA tightens up and twists up, and we have less access to who we truly are, it's gonna be harder, and it's gonna be more of a fight and a fear and a struggle. And what if we can be in that uncertainty, but with a certain amount of courage or faith or trust or whatever that allows us to be calmer and literally, have access to more of who we are. They say we have like 50 trillion cells in our body, and I don't know how many strands of DNA, and that's a lot of power.
There's a lot of power.
That is a lot of that in there that is really untapped. All these different pieces about how to deal, how to be, what is possible, what we're capable of. You were talking before about kind of the sense of global connectedness. And it reminded me, I think it was Dean Radin who was doing some studies tracking like the energetic spikes around the world at different times. So there's like the Schumann resonance is like an electromagnetic field and vibration around the earth. And it's, I think, like 7 point something hertz that they can measure. And so they had these measuring devices, boxes in different places around the world. And for example, shortly before the towers went down on 9/11, there was a spike in these waves that they were tracking. And like, nobody knew that was going to happen. I mean, certainly the whole world didn't, but somehow there was this collective energetic global response to that. And so, beyond the I'm sending, food and blankets and aid and doing this and that on the physical plane, on the material plane that we can track. We really are having this global experience energetically. So what if we are in our best possible state of being, with our most of our or more of our innate abilities available to us, what can we create then? Now what is possible?
Let's remind people to ask that question, what else is possible? You don't stop with the first time you ask it. This is something you just keep asking all day long. And if you're in a store and you don't get a response that you like, you just ask the clerk, what else is possible, and see what happens, because there's some amazing stories with that. Okay, so let's wrap this conversation up, and I'm sure we will have another one soon, but can you tell people how they can reach you?
Yes, on Facebook, you can reach me. Look up, search for Miché Shines, and my Spoonbenders Cafe. I have both a business page and a group called Spoonbenders Cafe, and I would love to have you there and be having more discussions. And, I post things like these discussions and other useful, expansive things. And you can reach me at micheshines@gmail.com, and I would love to talk to anybody who, wants to broach this or wants some support, some help, some coaching, or just, discussion about how to get through these times and how to be open and in uncertainty.
Excellent. All right. And all of these links will also be available on conversationsfromtheedge.net under any of Miche's bios. All right. Thank you so much, my friend. We will be talking again soon. This is your host, Christine Meizner. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation from the edge of consciousness. You can find all our conversations at conversationsfromtheedge.net. You'll also find links to schedule a private conversation with me or any of my friends, as well as tools to help you expand your own consciousness and explore what's possible for you outside the boundaries of your current perceptions. Feel free to use this podcast to start your own conversation by sharing it with friends, on social media, in your blog, or even in your own podcast. And as always, live the adventure of pushing your own edge. It's the most amazing adventure there is.